The coffee in my hand had gone cold hours ago, but I barely noticed. I was too busy watching my husband load the last of his designer luggage into his truck, whistling like a man without a single care in the world. 13 years of marriage. And he was whistling. "You're making a mistake, Tyler," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. He turned to face me, that infuriating smirk spreading across his face. The same smirk that once charmed me at a friend's wedding in Whistler. Now it just made my stomach turn. "The only mistake I made was staying this long," he said, zipping up his jacket. "Brianna understands me. She appreciates what I've built. You've always been too busy with your little government job to notice." My little government job. That's what he called 12 years at the Canada Revenue Agency, where I'd worked my way up to senior tax auditor. The irony was almost poetic. "And the money?" I asked, keeping my expression neutral. "The $473,000 you moved to your numbered company last month?" For just a moment, a flicker of something crossed his face. Surprise? Fear? But it vanished quickly, replaced by that arrogant confidence I'd grown to despise. "I don't know what you're talking about. My accountant handles all of that." "Right," I nodded slowly. "Your accountant. The one who's been creating fake invoices from Brianna's interior design company for the past 18 months. Very creative, by the way. Charging your construction business $200,000 for design consultations on projects that never existed." The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might pass out right there in our driveway. Our neighbors, the Patels, were pretending to check their mail while watching our little drama unfold. "How did you—" "I'm a tax auditor, Tyler. It's literally my job to find exactly this kind of thing." I took a sip of my cold coffee, savoring the moment. "But don't worry, I didn't report you. Yet." He grabbed my arm, his grip tight enough to leave marks. "Natalie, whatever you think you know, I know everything," I said quietly, pulling away. "Every fake invoice, every cash withdrawal, every deposit into Brianna's account. I know about the condo you bought her in Yaletown. I know about the trips to Mexico you told me were business meetings. I know that you've been planning to divorce me for over a year and leave me with nothing while you ride off into the sunset with your 27-year-old girlfriend." My husband, the man I'd trusted with everything, stood there speechless for the first time in our entire marriage. "The question is," I continued, "what are you going to do about it?" Let me take you back to where this all began. 3 months ago, on a Tuesday evening that started like any other, I was working late at the Vancouver office, reviewing files for an upcoming audit. Most people thought my job was boring, just numbers and spreadsheets, but I found a certain satisfaction in it. Every discrepancy told a story. Every hidden dollar had a tale to tell. My phone buzzed. A text from my younger sister, Megan. "Call me when you can. It's about Tyler." Megan lived in Toronto, worked in fashion PR, and had never particularly liked my husband. I assumed she wanted to complain about something he'd said at Christmas dinner. I finished my file and called her on my way to the parking garage. "Nat, I don't know how to tell you this," she said, her voice careful in a way that immediately made my heart rate spike. "Just say it, Meg." My friend Courtney was in Vancouver last week for a conference. She saw Tyler at a restaurant in Gastown, with a woman, and they weren't exactly being subtle about it. I stopped walking, my keys frozen in my hand. "What do you mean?" "I mean she has photos, Nat. I'm sending them to you now. I'm so sorry." The images loaded slowly on my phone, each one a knife to the gut. My husband, in a booth at some trendy restaurant, his arm around a young woman with long blonde hair, kissing her cheek, holding her hand across the table, looking at her the way he used to look at me, back when we were first dating and the world seemed full of possibility. I sat in my car in that parking garage for over an hour, just staring at those photos. The initial shock gave way to something else, something colder. By the time I started my car and drove home, a plan was already forming in my mind. Tyler wasn't home that night. "A job site emergency in Surrey," he'd texted. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I went to his home office, the one room in our house he'd always been oddly protective about, and I started looking. What I found made the affair look like a minor footnote. Folders upon folders of financial documents. neatly organized in his filing cabinet. Bank statements from accounts I'd never seen. Invoices from a company called Brianna Mitchell Designs, charging astronomical amounts for services at properties I knew for a fact were basic residential builds. Wire transfer confirmations to a numbered company in the Cayman Islands. My husband wasn't just cheating on me. He was running a fraud scheme sophisticated enough to make most white-collar criminals jealous, and his girlfriend was right at the center of it. I took photos of everything, every document, every receipt, every damning piece of evidence. Then I put everything back exactly where I found it and went to bed. When Tyler came home at 2 in the morning, smelling like perfume and expensive wine, I pretended to be asleep. The next few weeks were the hardest of my life, playing the role of the oblivious wife while secretly building a case that would destroy everything my husband had worked for. Smiling across the breakfast table while calculating exactly how many years of prison time his tax evasion could earn him. I started with what I knew best: the taxes. Tyler's construction company, Westbrook Developments, had been declaring steady but modest profits for years. Nothing that would raise flags, nothing that would attract attention. But when I dug deeper, cross-referencing his declared income with the actual contracts I found in his office, the numbers didn't add up. Not even close. Over the past 3 years, my husband had hidden nearly $2 million from the CRA. Some of it went to Brianna, some to offshore accounts, and some to a lifestyle he'd been living behind my back: business-class flights to resort towns, hotel suites at $500 a night, jewelry I'd never seen him give to me. The girlfriend's company was even more damning. Brianna Mitchell Designs had declared revenues of $360,000 last year, with Tyler's company as its only client. But when I pulled the actual project files from his office, there was no design work on any of them. She was billing for services never rendered, and he was writing it off as a business expense. It was textbook tax fraud, and they'd been doing it right under my nose. But here's the thing about working for the CRA. I couldn't just walk into my supervisor's office and say, "Hey, I think my husband is committing fraud. Please audit him." That's not how it works. There are protocols, conflicts of interest, a whole bureaucratic maze designed to prevent exactly that kind of personal vendetta. So I did something smarter. I made an anonymous tip. The CRA has a hotline for reporting suspected tax evasion. It's meant for concerned citizens, business competitors, disgruntled employees. The tips get reviewed, prioritized, and if they have merit, assigned to an auditor for investigation. I knew exactly what to include in my report to make it impossible to ignore. Specific amounts, specific dates, specific discrepancies. I laid out the case so clearly that any competent auditor would have no choice but to investigate. And then I waited. 2 weeks later, I heard through the office grapevine that Westbrook Developments had been flagged for a comprehensive audit. The file had been assigned to Richard Huang, one of my colleagues known for his meticulous attention to detail and complete lack of sympathy for tax cheats. Perfect. While the CRA machinery slowly churned into action, I focused on the second part of my plan: the divorce. I consulted with 3 different family lawyers before settling on Patricia Okonkwo, a fierce woman in her 50s, with a reputation for eviscerating cheating husbands in court. I showed her the evidence I'd gathered, the photos from my sister, the financial documents, the whole sordid picture. "Mrs. Bergeron," she said, leaning back in her leather chair, "your husband is an idiot." I couldn't help but laugh. "Tell me something I don't know." He's been funneling marital assets to his mistress using a scheme so transparent a first-year accounting student could unravel it. In British Columbia, that's called dissipation of marital assets, and judges take an extremely dim view of it. She smiled, a shark scenting blood in the water. "We're not just going to get you 50%. We're going to get you significantly more, plus damages." "What about the offshore accounts?" "We'll subpoena his financial records as part of discovery. If he lies or hides anything, that's perjury. And given what you've shown me, I suspect he'll be facing much bigger problems than our divorce proceedings very soon." I nodded, feeling a grim satisfaction settle in my chest. "How long do we wait before filing?" "I'd recommend letting the CRA audit play out first. Once they've frozen his accounts and assessed penalties, his negotiating position will be significantly weaker. Patricia's eyes gleamed with something like admiration. You've thought this through very carefully. I've had 3 months to plan, I said. And a lot of sleepless nights. The audit began in earnest 6 weeks after my anonymous tip. Tyler came home one evening looking like he'd seen a ghost, his face pale and his hands shaking as he poured himself a whiskey. The goddamn tax people are auditing the company, he announced, downing his drink in one gulp. Going back 3 years. They want every receipt, every invoice, every contract. I looked up from the book I was pretending to read. That sounds stressful. Is everything in order? Of course, everything's in order, he snapped. Gerald handles all of that. It's just a waste of time, that's all. Gerald Frobisher was Tyler's accountant, a nervous little man who I suspected knew exactly what was going on but was too well paid to say anything. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I'm sure it will be fine, I said soothingly. These things happen all the time. Over the next few weeks, I watched my husband slowly unravel. The audit team was thorough, requesting documents Tyler couldn't produce, asking questions he couldn't answer. They'd found the invoices from Brianna's company and were now investigating her as well. Tyler stopped sleeping. He snapped at me constantly, drank more than ever, and spent hours on the phone with Gerald, trying to come up with explanations that simply didn't exist. Meanwhile, he was still sneaking off to see his girlfriend, apparently believing that doubling down on his mistakes would somehow make everything better. One evening, I came home to find him sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers, his head in his hands. They want to see her bank records, he said, not looking up. Brianna's bank records. They think the invoices are fake. Are they? The question hung in the air between us. For a moment, I thought he might actually tell me the truth, confess everything, beg for my help. Instead, he laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Don't be ridiculous. It's all legitimate business expenses. They're just looking for problems where there aren't any. Of course, I said, turning away to hide my expression. I'm sure your lawyers will sort it out. The CRA assessment arrived on a gray November morning, 3 months after the audit began. I wasn't supposed to know about it, officially. But word travels fast in a government office, and by lunchtime, everyone was talking about the construction company owner who'd been hit with a $783,000 reassessment, plus penalties and interest that pushed the total well over $1 million. They'd found everything. The fake invoices, the unreported income, the offshore transfers. Richard Huang had done exactly the job I knew he would do. I came home that evening to find Tyler in a state of complete panic. Empty bottles lined the kitchen counter, and he was pacing back and forth, his phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what it costs, just fix it, he was shouting at someone, presumably Gerald or one of his lawyers. Appeal it, delay it, do something. He hung up when he saw me, his eyes wild. We need to talk. About what? About everything. He ran his hands through his hair, looking older than his 39 years. The audit, it's not good, Nat. They're claiming I owe over $1 million. They've frozen the company accounts. I can't make payroll next week. I set down my purse, maintaining my carefully cultivated expression of concern. That sounds serious. How did this happen? I don't know. Someone must have tipped them off. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. And for just a second I saw suspicion flicker in his eyes. You work there. Did you hear anything? I work in a completely different department, Tyler. I audit corporate compliance, not construction companies. The lie came easily. After 3 months of deception, one more didn't even register. Right? Of course. He seemed to accept this, too distracted by his own problems to push further. I need to move some money around, cover the immediate shortfall. From where? I have some investments. Personal accounts. I knew exactly which accounts he meant. The ones he thought I didn't know about. The ones he'd been planning to use for his new life with Brianna. Do what you need to do, I said calmly. We'll get through this. The next morning, I filed for divorce. The papers were served to Tyler at a job site in Burnaby, in front of his entire crew. Patricia had suggested it, knowing that the public humiliation would throw him off balance and prevent him from destroying evidence before we could subpoena it. My phone rang within the hour. "What the hell is this?" Tyler's voice was shaking with rage. "You're divorcing me? Now? In the middle of everything?" "I know about Brianna," I said simply. "I've known for 3 months." Silence. Then, "That's nothing. It doesn't mean anything. I was going to end it." "You bought her a condo in Yaletown, Tyler. You've been paying her fake invoices for 18 months. You were planning to leave me with nothing and start a new life with her." I kept my voice flat, emotionless. "Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" "Natalie, please, we can talk about this. Work through it." "There's nothing to work through. My lawyer will be in touch about the division of assets." "Oh, and Tyler? The CRA knows about the offshore accounts too. You might want to mention that to Gerald." I hung up before he could respond. The next few weeks were chaos. Tyler tried everything, calling me constantly, showing up at my office, sending flowers and apologies, and increasingly desperate promises. When those didn't work, he switched tactics, threatening to fight the divorce, to drag it out for years, to make sure I got nothing. Through it all, I stayed calm. I had the evidence, I had the law on my side, and I had Patricia Okonkwo, who seemed to genuinely enjoy dismantling my husband's life piece by piece. The real turning point came when Tyler's lawyers finally reviewed the CRA assessment and realized the full scope of what he was facing. The tax fraud charges were just the beginning. They'd also found evidence of money laundering, and the RCMP had opened their own investigation. My husband was looking at potential criminal charges. He came to see me at our house, the one we'd bought together 8 years ago, when we still believed in happy endings. He looked terrible, unshaven and hollow-eyed, nothing like the confident man who'd whistled while packing his bags just a few months earlier. "I need your help," he said, his voice breaking. "Please, Natalie. I know I don't deserve it, but I don't know what else to do." "What kind of help?" "The CRA. Your colleagues. They're destroying me. I'll lose the company. I'll lose everything I've built. And now the RCMP is involved." He grabbed my hands, his grip desperate. "You know people. You could talk to someone. Explain that I made mistakes, but I'm not a criminal." I pulled my hands away gently. "Tyler, you are a criminal. You evaded taxes for years, you laundered money through your girlfriend's fake company, and you tried to hide marital assets during our divorce proceedings. Those are all crimes. I was going to pay it back. Eventually. I just needed time." "Time to do what? Run away to Mexico with Brianna?" I shook my head. "I'm not going to help you escape the consequences of your own choices. The CRA is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, and frankly, so is the RCMP. Then what do you want? Money? Take it all. Take the house, the business, everything." "I want exactly what I'm entitled to under the law," I said. "No more, no less. And I want you to understand something, Tyler. I didn't do this to you. You did this to yourself. Every decision, every lie, every fake invoice, that was all you. I just made sure you couldn't hide from the consequences." He stared at me, understanding finally dawning in his eyes. "You reported me. The anonymous tip, it was you." I didn't confirm or deny it. I didn't have to. "I loved you," he said, his voice hollow. "For years. I really did love you." "I know," I replied. "That's what makes it so much worse." Brianna Mitchell tried to contact me twice during the divorce proceedings. The first time, she left a voicemail, her voice shaky and defensive, insisting that she and Tyler were in love and that I should let him go peacefully. I deleted it without responding. The second time, she showed up at my office. I was walking back from lunch when I saw her waiting in the lobby, a young woman with expensive highlights and designer clothes that my husband had probably paid for. She looked nervous, out of her depth. "Mrs. Bergeron? I'm Brianna Mitchell. I was hoping we could talk." "I know who you are," I said, not slowing down. "And no, we can't." She followed me toward the elevators. "Please. Tyler won't take my calls. The CRA is auditing me now, and my lawyer says I could face charges." I stopped and turned to face her. She was younger than I'd expected up close. mid-20s at most, with the kind of desperate expression I'd seen on the faces of many people who'd made very bad decisions. "Let me guess," I said. "Tyler told you the invoices were perfectly legal. A smart way to structure payments, nothing to worry about." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "He said his accountant handled everything. I didn't know it was fraud. And the condo he bought you, the trips to Mexico, the $160,000 in your bank account that came directly from his company?" The color drained from her face. "I don't have that kind of money. Not anymore. You don't. But you did, until about 3 months ago, when Tyler started moving funds to prepare for the divorce he thought I didn't know was coming." Brianna looked genuinely shocked. "He was planning to divorce you?" "Sweetheart," I said, my voice gentler than she deserved. "He was planning to divorce me and set up a new life with you. He told you that, didn't he? That once he was free, you'd be together properly?" Her silence was answer enough. "Here's what I think happened," I continued. "Tyler swept you off your feet, bought you nice things, made you feel special. He told you his marriage was loveless, that his wife didn't understand him, all the classic lines. And when he asked you to do him a small favor, send some invoices to his company for design work you never actually did, you didn't ask questions because you trusted him." Brianna was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. "I loved him. I know. That's how men like Tyler operate. They make you complicit in their schemes before you even realize what's happening, so that by the time you figure it out, you're in too deep to walk away. What do I do now?" I thought about that for a moment. Part of me wanted to walk away, let her face the consequences of her choices just like Tyler was facing his. But she was barely older than my sister, and despite everything, I didn't think she was a bad person. Just a stupid one. "Get a good tax lawyer," I said finally. "Cooperate fully with the CRA and the RCMP. Tell them everything, including anything Tyler might have asked you to lie about. Your best chance at avoiding criminal charges is demonstrating that you were manipulated and that you're willing to help them build their case." "Against Tyler?" "Against Tyler, yes. Consider it a lesson in choosing your partners more carefully." I walked away without looking back. I heard later that she took my advice, turned over everything she had to the authorities, and received a reduced assessment in exchange for her cooperation. Last I heard, she'd moved back to Saskatchewan to live with her parents. The divorce settlement came through in early spring, 6 months after I'd filed. Tyler, facing criminal charges and a collapsing business empire, was in no position to fight. Patricia had been right. We didn't just get 50%. The judge, taking into account Tyler's dissipation of marital assets, his fraud, and his general contempt for the legal process, awarded me 65% of everything, plus the house. I sat in Patricia's office while she walked me through the final numbers. The house, paid off. My share of the legitimate business assets, about $800,000. Plus, Tyler was ordered to pay my legal fees. "He'll probably declare bankruptcy within the year," Patricia said. "The tax assessment alone will wipe out whatever's left." "What about the criminal charges?" "His lawyers are negotiating. He'll likely plead to a lesser charge, pay a substantial fine, and do community service or house arrest. First-time offender, white-collar crime, you know how it goes." I nodded. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was enough. Tyler Bergeron would spend the next decade digging himself out of the hole he'd created, and everyone in the Vancouver business community would know exactly why. "Natalie," Patricia said, her expression softening, "you played this perfectly. Most people in your situation would have confronted him immediately, given him time to hide evidence and prepare a defense. You waited, planned, and executed. I'm genuinely impressed." "I learned a lot from my job," I said. "Tax cheats always think they're smarter than the system. They never are." 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I was sitting in my new office on the 12th floor of a downtown Vancouver tower. I'd left the CRA to join a private forensic accounting firm, specializing in exactly the kind of financial investigations that had brought down my ex-husband. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone buzzed with a text from Megan. "Saw Tyler's name in the news. Tax fraud charges. Yikes. You okay?" I smiled, looking out at the mountains in the distance, still snow-capped even in late spring. Better than okay, I typed back. I'm free, and I was. Free from a marriage built on lies. Free from a man who thought his wife was too stupid to notice his betrayal. Free from the weight of wondering when the other shoe would drop. Tyler's trial made the local news for about a week. He pleaded guilty to tax evasion, received a suspended sentence, and was ordered to pay full restitution to the CRA. His company went into receivership, his professional reputation was destroyed, and the last I heard, he was working as a project manager for one of his former competitors. The house I got in the divorce was too big for just me, filled with too many memories. I sold it 6 months after the settlement and bought a condo in Olympic Village with views of False Creek. It was smaller, cleaner, a fresh start. On my first night in the new place, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood on the balcony, watching the city lights reflect off the water. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. I hope you're happy now. You destroyed everything. I didn't need to guess who it was from. I thought about responding, about pointing out all the ways he'd destroyed himself long before I got involved, about the choices he'd made, the lies he'd told, the woman he'd betrayed. But what was the point? Tyler would never understand that he was the architect of his own downfall. Men like him never did. Instead, I blocked the number and went inside to unpack. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a run along the seawall. The cherry blossoms were just starting to bloom, painting the waterfront in soft shades of pink. Other runners nodded as they passed, strangers united by the simple pleasure of movement on a beautiful morning. I thought about everything I'd learned over the past year. About trust and betrayal. About the difference between the people we think we know and the people they really are. About the quiet satisfaction of watching someone face the consequences of their own cruelty. But mostly, I thought about what comes next. At 34, I had a successful career, a beautiful home, and a future that belonged entirely to me. The years with Tyler weren't wasted, exactly. They'd taught me things about myself I might never have learned otherwise. How strong I could be when I needed to be. How patient, how ruthlessly strategic when the situation demanded it. My sister called me that evening, just to check in. "How are you really doing?" she asked. "I'm good, Meg. Really good." "No regrets?" I thought about that for a moment. About the woman I'd been when I first saw those photos in the parking garage, shattered and betrayed. About the woman I'd become. The one who'd dismantled her husband's life with the same meticulous precision she brought to her tax audits. "No regrets," I said. "He made his choices. I made mine. And if you could go back and do anything differently," I laughed, "I'd have paid more attention to the red flags before I married him. But that's a lesson for next time." There's going to be a next time? Maybe. Someday. With someone who understands that underestimating me is the worst mistake he could make. We said our goodbyes and I hung up, looking around my new living room. It was still mostly empty, boxes stacked in corners waiting to be unpacked. But it was mine. Every square meter of it, paid for with money I'd earned through my own intelligence and determination. Tyler had tried to take everything from me. My home, my savings, my sense of self. Instead, he'd given me something far more valuable. The knowledge that I could survive anything, that I could take the worst kind of betrayal and transform it into a victory. The dream house was gone, sold to a young couple with a baby on the way, who would fill it with new memories, untainted by old lies. The marriage was over, 13 years reduced to legal documents and financial settlements. But I was still standing. And that, I realized, was worth more than any house or husband could ever be. Looking back now, almost a year after that first terrible night in the parking garage, I understand something important about betrayal. It doesn't define you. It doesn't have to break you. It's just information, data points, that tell you who someone really is when they think no one's watching. Tyler thought he knew me. He thought he'd married a boring tax auditor who would never question his stories, never look too closely at his accounts, never fight back when he tried to take everything we'd built together. He was wrong, and that was the most expensive mistake of his life. If you're watching this and you see yourself in my story, if you're married to someone who insists on keeping their name on all the important documents, who gets defensive when you ask about money, who dismisses your concerns as nagging, please listen carefully, trust your instincts, document everything, and never, ever let someone convince you that you're not smart enough to understand what's really going on. Because the truth always comes out eventually. The only question is whether you'll be ready when it does.